cities have become unlivable, unsanitary nightmares, surrendered to the homeless, the drug addicted, and the violent and dangerously deranged.
All right, welcome to Nowhere. I'm your host, Keegan, and I apologize in this intro for the sound of my air conditioning in the background. I'm not going to turn it off for this short intro because it's hot outside and it gets very hot up here. But anyways, this episode, I'm really excited about it. So I reached out to the Our Streets Collective in Pittsburgh because I saw an article online about them where they had protested homeless sweeps by setting up and camping themselves. And that grabbed my attention because I'm kind of always got my eye out for like forms of resistance that still resemble the gathering of community, if that makes sense, where there's something more permanent. It's not permanent, but more, there's something more there than just a fleeting protest, like a normal protest, I guess. But I talked to co-founder Sam Schmidt, and we talk about the protest, the difficulties they've encountered working with the city and all of the homeless sweeps that have been happening, and their choice to move away a little bit from helping the city, and like why they've made those decisions. But really, outside of that, the theme of this interview is solidarity, mutual aid. It's about building community by being part of community. So Our Streets Collective is not a nonprofit. It's not a governmental organization. They get no grants of any kind, yet they provide material, financial, and food to people who need it. So they work with kind of this large mutual aid network of people and other organizations. One, they work with people who are incarcerated, along with the Bucket Bail Fund, which is another mutual aid organization. And there's this kind of network of people, and they do like a food distribution where they eat and share food outside the jail and catch people coming out and like make sure they have what they need to get where they're going. So like everything they do it's not only for their neighbors, but it's like with their neighbors. It's hard to explain, really. I don't know. I honestly, I found this interview to be incredibly inspiring. This collective of people is doing it's that kind of stuff I would like to be doing. And I really think these are the kind of things that if we're doing them if these things were happening around the entire country, I think we would be living in a much richer and wonderful world. Sam talks about, how they have fun doing these things too. We talk about, a lot of stuff, but also like people out there who don't go through the system, who don't want to, and how they still deserve help in community, how putting the impetus on the individual is kind of failing them and will continue to. I don't know. It really comes down to, I think, the simple idea of community. And I know you probably heard me say this if you've been listening to this show. You've heard me say that over and over by now, probably, that everything comes back down to like community. And it's very true. It's just coming from that place of love for your fellow neighbors, and very much just being part of, with facilitating space, giving people space, all that kind of stuff. Very happy, very excited about this interview. I think you guys will like it. You may have noticed I'm kind of brand new to any form of community organizing, so I'm learning about this stuff as I go along, which I hope is valuable to anyone else who is of the same mind as me. And so bear with me as I stumble along here. Sam says, you just got to get out there. If this is something you want to do, do the thing. And I've noticed now with like the interview I did with Peter Huff that food really seems to be the seed where much of this organizing and helping each other comes from. I think it's a very simple, tangible thing. They started with like food, not bombs, and yeah, it's I think Sam suggests, like, if you want to get started doing this thing, to just like set up a table somewhere, offer one dish, free food, and yeah. Um, but yeah, I'll let Sam explain these things. We talk about the recent protests and then so much more. So I'll go ahead and play that interview. And obviously, if you're watching this, this is the first video I've ever posted. So um, if you're listening to this, the link to the videos in the show notes, and then if you're watching this, the link to the podcast is in the show notes of whatever YouTube calls that. It's down there. So yeah, enjoy. All right, and then yeah, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name is Sam Schmidt. I use any and all pronouns, and I am the founder of Our Streets Collective and was a longtime member of Food Not Bombs in Pittsburgh.
Right on. I guess before we get into the protests, my first question is like, what kind of led you into this kind of work that you're doing?
Well, I'm a poor person. I'm formerly houseless, so have had the really horrible and traumatic experience of being homeless in America. And there's a couple reasons. Firstly, I just never wanted anyone to go through that experience alone because I think the worst part about homelessness for me was just the social isolation and just the way that people dehumanize
Mm,
folks who are poor and like don't recognize their humanity. I really wanted to make sure that the folks around us in our communities are not having that experience, even though they're experiencing extreme poverty. And then we partly founded the group in response to just like the numerous encampment sweeps happening around Pittsburgh under the Gainey administration. I was previously doing really great food justice work with Food Not Bombs, but just wanted to do something that was built a little more on the relationship building with community members and like doing actual outreach and more material support other than just food support. So me and a couple comrades from other mutual aid groups around the area founded Our Streets Collective.
awesome. Right on. And so I guess that kind of leads into the protest. The are you so yeah, I've seen you guys are having a lot of sweeps going on. And do you want to just talk a little bit about the protest you guys did and just how it's different from other ones?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I'll give you a little bit of context, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
Since founding the group in 2023, there have been like 11 encampment sweeps that are some are publicized, some are not, some are big, some are small. Um, but sorry, what was I going to say about that? Oh, so we've tried a lot of different avenues to support our folks in, during that time and before and after. Typically, the city and county just focus on those encampment sweeps, and we do a lot of like trauma reduction and aftercare, and then just like support tasks. So basically, we had gotten into this habit of every time we knew an encampment sweep was coming, just connecting with our folks and just asking them what kind of support they need. Um, and what ultimately ended up happening with that was that we were supporting our folks during these sweeps, but we were effectively making it easier for the city and county to do these sweeps because we were, reducing trauma and like making sure people's needs were met and all of that. So we have relationships with people in city and county government.
Yeah.
So, it's not like we're not already in communication with them all the time. We're advocating, like we had been advocating since on this most recent set of encampment sweeps since December of 2024. we held a protest outside of the mayor's house at that time, and as a result started getting meetings with the mayor's administration and the Department of Human Services here weekly. So we've been in conversation, we've been using our voice, we've been advocating for our folks, and platforming their opinions and needs and all of that, and it was really not going anywhere. So with this recent protest, the situation was pretty complex because people had begun camping outside of the city's biggest homeless shelter. And that's because of a chronic shortage of beds citywide. There's just nowhere for them to go. They're waitlisted for a long time to get into housing, sometimes months or years. And in this particular situation, it was actually a threat from the building insurance company that was the main driver behind them deciding to sweep folks from around the shelter. But obviously, you can imagine not only the optics of that, but like the lack of humanity in kicking
Mm,
people out of this space. They're literally camping outside the doors, just waiting for a bed to go inside, and
yeah.
yeah. So they decided to sweep. So we decided that that was not acceptable, and that we needed to do two things. We needed to raise public awareness about the continuous and constant displacement of our folks on the street, and that we needed to push back. And one thing that we've been advocating for is the freedom of movement and right to camp for all people who are forced outside as a result of a lack of resources and beds. And we decided that we needed to stop asking for that and just start taking it. And so we collaborated with all of our folks who are camping outside of the shelter and talked about what kinds of support they need and want. And we talked about the usual stuff, but then we pitched this idea of like, what if we just defend the space and camp here with you? And everybody was really excited and supportive of that. So we showed up on Thursday night, the night before they were meant to sweep, and we camped out for about 15 or 16 hours in all until the city eventually came and did decommission that area and clean the space with like high powered pressure washers and whatnot. But we took that opportunity to just establish solidarity with our folks and to push back against this, both the city and the county, who we did end up talking to in quote unquote negotiations. But there wasn't really anything to negotiate at that point. Basically, we just reasserted that we are going to demand this right to camp and freedom of movement, and we're going to start just doing that. And if that means that we go to jail as privileged housed folks, then that's what happens. But the alternative is ultimately basically a homelessness to mass incarceration pipeline here, where there are not options for people. And so, not having a solution means that our folks were going to go directly to jail. And that's something that we've been experiencing. So we just wanted to get in the way of that, make sure nobody was getting harassed or detained by police. And that's what we did.
Right on. Yeah, so it sounds like you guys kind of transitioned from a collaboration with the government to just being like, we're just not doing this anymore. I mean, do you guys still talk to them, or have you guys just given up like communicating with them?
That's a good question. In those negotiations with the city and county, like during the second morning of that protest, they did indicate that they wanted to continue working with us as advocates. And I just asked them why.
Yeah, yeah.
Because, we're not getting what we need. The way that things have been going is that our liberal government will co-opt the language and ideas of what we're talking about, but never actually
Mm-hmm.
follow through. So, I told them like, there is a possibility that we maintain these relationships, but as of right now, there's really no benefit to us to maintain those
Right.
relationships. The benefit would solely be to them. And basically that is like us giving them the radical ideas they need to actually address homelessness and not just the optics.
Yeah, and like the optics that they're like, oh, we're collaborating with these outreach groups and
Right.
shit
And
like that.
that's another thing that they have done the last 7 or 8 months, however long we were in those meetings, is constantly like publicly applaud us and give us our accolades and pat us on the back and like That has always felt so gross and fake and
Yeah.
and just like we haven't even come to a solution yet, and you are just trying to like spotlight me because you think that appeasing me is going to get me to shut up and not actually
Yeah.
follow through on these goals, but that's not what we're here for. So yeah,
Yeah.
it is a lot of that. Like we don't care for the lip service, and like I told them at that negotiation table, the only metric for success here is the experience of homelessness. So if my people are suffering, then we're going to keep showing up. We're going to keep making these demands. We're going to keep being the thorn in your side. We're going to keep, publicizing this. And yeah, I just basically explained that they can get on board with what we're doing or they can be in our way. But if they're in our
Yeah.
way, they're not going to like the escalation that's coming.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like at some point you have to wonder. I wonder a lot with different places. It's like, there's studies out there, there's shit around displacement. There's plenty of fucking evidence that it is harmful. It's more expensive medically. There's more medical
Mhm.
shit that goes on with it. People lose medication, more visits to the emergency room, more overdoses because people are getting, there's not people around to administer Narcan if they're all like, so at some point you almost have to wonder, like, are you guys just hoping these people die? Like, what the is going on here? It's like, what, this doesn't work, and they just keep doing it. And yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know. It's
exactly. And that's like what we kept explaining in these meetings is that not having a plan for folks when they land on the street while homelessness is rising, not just here, but across the country, means that the plan is death or incarceration. Not
yeah,
having a plan condemns folks to those outcomes. And we see that in every encampment sweep. Almost every encampment sweep, we lose somebody. Even if
mm,
it's only a dozen folks being displaced, there's almost always a death shortly thereafter. There's always like exploitative behaviors by the police, so they will ramp up harassment leading up to an encampment sweep and proactively just like run people's names to try to incarcerate them before the sweep happens. All kinds of things like that. Yeah.
yeah. Did this stuff get worse after the like last summer when the grants passed Supreme Court decision got passed? That kind of made it federally no longer protected by the Eighth Amendment right to like essentially criminalize public camping, as they call it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I guess it's gotten slightly worse, but what was odd was that when that grants pass decision came down, the mayor's administration put out a statement to say that they're not in support of this, they're not going to enforce this, et cetera, et cetera.
Hmm.
But at the same time, so their justifications for encampment sweeps are other than this grants pass ruling, but at the same time they've done nothing to like enact legislation to protect our folks from this ruling or protect them from the police, and they've largely just said that they have no control or authority over the police. And so like that, the culture of our police districts here is that of like condescension and bullying toward houseless people in most zones in the area. And they just kind of throw their hands up and say, "What can we do? Nothing."
Yeah,
So to me,
yeah,
that's the same thing. Also, last year, our mayor's administration enacted a local ordinance to criminalize camping, like with all these parameters, but basically within 10 feet of a public trail or waterway or railway. And though they have also said they don't plan to enforce that, they kind of enforce these things arbitrarily as it suits their needs.
yeah, yeah. Um, yeah. So I guess one question I had is with the just like the protesting you're doing and stuff, and also I feel like I don't know. There's this idea I've been thinking about a lot lately of we have a lot of people in the country who are would say they're radicalized and they want to tear shit down, right? And like, which I totally sympathize with that. But I think the thing that I don't know, like I'm trying to find different places that are actually doing stuff, and I think the main thing that I always come back to is like building community, like is so crucial and important. And if you're not, because it's like, what are you doing anything for if you're not like building and interacting with your local community. It's but yeah, so I guess I don't know. How have you found that, like, building community? I'm curious, like, just how important that's been and the process there, kind of.
The process is just being kind to your neighbors and building genuine relationships with them, and being real about that, being authentic about that, and investing in people. One thing that I always say that, like, we are part of a broader outreach community in Pittsburgh that includes government outreach workers and nonprofit outreach workers. And I always like to say that the delineation between them and us is that we start with relationship building. So, like,
Mm,
if, I mean, we're just a mutual aid group, so we're just neighbors. I
right,
always say that. We don't have grant funding or government
right,
funding. So if we can do nothing materially for our folks, the bare minimum we can do is be their friends, be there in
yeah,
solidarity, know them, love them through this experience, which is incredibly isolating and dangerous and scary.
yeah,
Um, so, so yeah. And then the other thing is, like, kind of part of our philosophy is that, it's one thing to be angry about all the things that are messed up and going wrong, because there are so many, and our
right,
government facilitates that.
right,
But if you really want to build structures that supersede the existing structures and are better and more effective and, more compassionate than those, then you have to begin with love. You have to begin
yes,
with that. So if you're in this space just because you're angry, anger can be a great motivator, but your
yeah,
anger has to be built from love. So that's where
yeah,
the relationships in the community comes in. And after so many years of doing this, I feel, the houseless folks that we're in contact with and in community with every single week, sometimes for years, are my family, are my friends. That is my community. And so, it's not separate or different in any way. In fact, they are the people that I would most of the time rather be with.
yeah, yeah,
Um, so it's definitely about that. You have to do that authentic relationship building and have those real connections and community.
yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you said that. That is another thing I've been thinking about lately, is just kind of this concept of, like, radical love, and how love is an action. It's not just something you feel, and to show that you take action. But yeah, I think it's because, like, I don't know. I've been looking around in my local area, and it's like one person I found. I'm in Central Illinois, so there's not a whole lot of stuff going on in general. But like, I found a pastor in Alton, which is near St. Louis, and has uh he's the pastor of a mission that most of their people or half are unhoused, and the other half's like in extreme poverty. But he's like one of the most radical people in the entire area. And his whole thing was just like, we start with, instead of targeting people to feed them or do anything like that, we just have food. We eat with them. We eat with our congregation, and, like, they are our congregation. And everything he's done has been built off of that. And that kind of idea of, I don't know. I just love that idea of, like, you're not going out there to target people to help them. You're literally just like, these are our neighbors. This is just what you do because we love our neighbors. That kind of, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. There's a big difference between charity and solidarity.
Yeah.
And that charity model tends to be really rooted in, like, faith-based organizing.
Yeah.
So that's like one thing. There are a couple of faith leaders, and honestly, sometimes Christian faith leaders are super radical. Like, Jesus as a historical figure was a radical person, and
Yeah. Yeah.
so if they're actually honoring their faith, then it's a pretty easy appeal to be like, hey, we're breaking bread with our people. This isn't like white saviorism or
Right. Right.
charity model where you are different than the person. Like, we all are eating at the distros, are interacting at the distros. We make art together. Oh, our distros are hot meal distributions. That's our little nickname for them.
Yeah. I was curious about that too. I saw something about that, and about them occurring at or, like, outside the jail.
Yeah,
How
we
does that work?
It works really well, actually. There's a lot of places to sit out there. There's a big open space outside the jail. And the reason that we set up there is because we work in collaboration with another mutual aid group called Bucket Bail Fund. And that name comes from the name of a person that was incarcerated at that jail and died while there. And
Hmm.
that's just a community bail fund that anyone can put in a request for who needs support in the event that their justice system affected. And so what we do is we set up outside of the jail and we give cash to everybody that gets released, and we give them like a bus ticket if they need that, or whatever resources they're looking for, food, clothes, shoes, whatever. So that's part of the reason why we set up outside of the jail, just so we can catch those folks coming out, make sure they have community, make sure they have whatever they need to be stable or get where they're going. And then the city's biggest shelter is like 2 doors down from there, so we're really
Oh
close
wow.
to a big houseless population, and so it just makes it a really central location for us all to gather, kind of away from the shelter, which has some trauma associated to it for a lot of our folks, but in an
Yeah.
open space where we can all be together and spread out and do our thing.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome. Um, ooh, uh, yeah, let me see here. Um, oh yeah, I was curious too. I saw that you guys have meetings with the National Union of the Homeless, and what is that like? I was curious about that was actually the first time I've heard of that. And I was very curious about what that's like and what they do.
Yeah, the National Union of the Homeless has been around at least since the 80s. I want to say 1980, but I might have that wrong. And basically, it's just organizing of for and by unhoused people. So we hold a space so that houseless folks can gather and organize themselves toward whatever goals they have. So, for example, one of our first projects was to write an open letter to the city's biggest shelter, the one where we recently had the protest, to say, the conditions are not adequate here and people are being kicked out of here arbitrarily, and we want answers and we want that to change. And so the National Union of the Homeless circulated that letter through the outreach community and collected a bunch of signatures, and we used that to pressure the shelter to make certain changes toward just better conditions. And whatever, those are all concessions, and like we don't get really far with that stuff, but we create the space so that folks, they have a space, they have safety, they have the resources they need to organize themselves should they want to do that. And then it also kind of functions just as a support space for people landing on the street for the first time, who can talk with other houseless folks, other squatters, etc., just to kind of understand how to survive the landscape, and
Hmm.
to anticipate their upcoming needs and things like that. So we've been facilitating the National Union of the Homeless here in Pittsburgh for the last 2 years, every week on Sundays, and that's what we do with that space.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome. Um, yeah, then I was also curious, I hear like collective and mutual aid, and obviously I think of like anarchism. But I've noticed that you looking through your site and everything, and some of the writing that has come out is I've noticed you guys aren't super heavy on pushing that, like, hey, we're anarchists, like that, and like I hear a couple words in there that I'm like, oh yeah, that's, but I don't know, and honestly, I kind of appreciate that because I feel like I don't know if you really want to build solidarity with like people. I don't know, some people. I feel like some people come very like rhetoric heavy at people and just alienate them instead of like just start with action. That's how I see all of this is like just build the community and give people space and all of that. But yeah, I was just curious if that was like a conscious like choice you guys made.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, we built the organization on basically anarchist values, and but the thing is, if you want to organize, of, for, and by the people, then all the people have to be included. And so we have like bare minimum standards for political education. Like you gotta be an abolitionist. You can't be a
Yeah.
reformist when it comes to policing or incarceration because it affects so many of our folks so heavily. But we do, but and we all have like varying theories of change in terms of where anarchism fits into building the future. I personally call myself like an anarcho-communist, but
Yeah.
I think that anarchism and its values and the way that we build community in anarchism is super important to kick off the changes that we need to rebuild society, essentially. But that eventually, mostly because of the scale and size of America, we would have to move kind of toward a socialist model to get to a more like communist type of
Right.
society. So, all that to say, we're all leftists. There's a lot of
Yeah. Yeah.
bringing ideology under that umbrella, but we do a lot of reading and a lot of political education together. So we're teaching,
Nice.
facilitating, attending classes. We're facilitating reading groups. We have the mobile library that comes to every distro so folks can take out their own books based on what they want to read. And then as we're building relationships with people, we're just looking for opportunities to do political education and explain anarchism, socialism, communism as alternatives to capitalism, basically. So we don't like to force anyone into those structures, especially because, like I said, we're building community with folks from all walks of life and all types of
Yeah.
life experience. So
Yeah.
all varying levels of education or lack thereof. So we try to meet people where they're at with love and guidance and with the understanding that we're all learning and we're all imperfect and we all continue to grow together.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. It makes me think of like there's I don't know, I have a local Facebook group. They're in town that like they're doing mutual aid, but they don't call it mutual aid. I don't even know if they know that that's what they're doing, but it's like, oh yeah, yeah, you guys are doing the thing. Um, but
There,
yeah, like kind of what you said about I don't know, rebuilding society. I know you might have been talking about the future, but I also feel like right now, you know, the whole like whatever the fuck Margaret Thatcher said, like there is no society, there's only individuals. I feel like that is unfortunately kind of true right now, especially with um online like community. I don't know, there I feel like there's some good stuff that can come out of being online, but a lot of it is like uh I don't know, not so helpful, I guess. But
yeah, totally.
so yeah, I guess I'd be curious if you have any advice for anyone anywhere else who like wants to get involved locally and just has like no idea where to even start.
I mean, it's kind of like what the folks that you just described are doing. Like you just start.
Yeah. Yeah.
We Food Not Bombs is where I started my mutual aid journey, and I've worked with them here in Pittsburgh, in Budapest, Hungary, and in Los Angeles. And we've never written out a plan or requested permits or anything like that. We just
Yeah.
hired some tables, cooked some food, and served it and ate it with the community. And you just build from there. But I always tell people, like, if you're inspired by this work, do it. Do it in your neighborhood. Start with one table and one dish and just say, hey, just put a sign that says free food and
Yeah.
stuff, whatever, free conversation. And just look for those opportunities to connect with your neighbors genuinely. It's,
Yeah.
even just starting small is going to attract people that are going to want to participate and are going to want to help and are going to want to, benefit from the resources offered and all of that. And so it doesn't really matter what the medium is, whether it's food or like just handing out cigarettes to people or a little bit of cash. That's just the medium to facilitate conversation and connection. Um,
Yeah.
so just don't overthink it would be my advice. Just start, you know,
Yeah.
it's okay to start before you're ready or, start without having done the reading.
Yeah.
Anyone can do what we're doing.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, I do like I mean you said it earlier about coming from a place of love too, but I feel like that is so important with this stuff where that I don't know, I kind of have that notion of like a notion of radical love where it's like unfortunately loving people who are houseless is radical and loving, you know, Palestinians, immigrants, unfortunately that stuff is really radical right now. But yeah, I don't know exactly where I was going with that.
No, yeah, I mean, that's a great point. It's like, it seems like people have a really hard time conceptualizing what helping in a meaningful way looks like, but it really, really just looks like seeing a person in need and saying, like, hey, what can I offer you? Like, what can I do for you? Do you want a hug? I've never been declined that, you know?
Yeah,
I'm not a
yeah,
hugger, but I offer a lot of hugs because sometimes
yeah,
people just need very simple connection, and that can change their whole mentality and their whole energy about the day and their whole perspective. So, you know, just really genuinely asking folks, what do you need? And what can I offer? How can I help? And trusting that they know what they need, and trusting that, you know, the experience, if you haven't experienced homelessness, you can't understand. So, you know, just really believing in people, authentically loving them. That's where it all begins and ends, really.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I was curious kind of with what you're saying there, if there's a place for like, you said, it sounded like kind of with the National Union of the Homeless thing too, that there's some space for, like, I feel like people sharing their personal experience is very important to help other people understand maybe that's like, I don't know, with me, that's what I've tried to do with this podcast. With when I've like interviewed at other people who are actually were out there, living it. But I feel like that can be very helpful in um, just humanizing people and like putting a face for even for people who might be like on the other side, like against kind of any of this stuff happening. But yeah, I was just wondering if there's like if that has been a part of this for you guys at all.
Yeah, 100%. Like we recently just opened up the National Union of the Homeless meetings to housed folks, just for more solidarity, more support. We have a little like initial reading that we ask housed folks to do before they come into the group, just to frame what we're doing. But also, even like during that most recent protest that we had where we were camping in solidarity, part of what we put on our social media post was like, come listen to your neighbors' stories, understand
Mm,
how did they get here, and you know why, because there's a million reasons why people land in homelessness. I mean, we all know the root cause is that housing is commodified and
yeah,
not treated as a human right, which it is. And cost of living is ridiculously high and rising. But, you know, anything from an injury that takes you out of work, or a medical bill that you can't pay, or an illegal eviction, or death of a caregiver or family member, any of those things, and an abundance of other reasons can land you in homelessness. So I do think it's really important for the community to understand fully, which is again why relationship building is so important. But all of our decision making, and particularly our decision making around direct action, is always informed by folks experiencing houselessness right now. So, you know, we're always like, their voices are the heaviest in our decision
mm,
making, and we try to listen really carefully to what the need is, what the challenges might be, etc., and just make sure that we're always centering them above us.
yeah, yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. Um, Let me see here. And then, yeah, I was curious. Was there anything else that you guys do with people who are incarcerated? You were talking about doing the helping people who are coming out and stuff. And then, or yeah, the other group you were talking about does helps people with bail. Is
Yeah. Yeah, they do community bail support. So, anyone, basically, what happens for houseless folks who are mostly unaware of this bail fund is that someone will advocate on their behalf and put in a request for bail support, restitution support, things like that. And we're doing that because, you know, obviously, like, cash bail is disproportionately effective against houseless people and poor people. But we also do all kinds of jail support and bail support and court support. So if anybody gets arrested and they're in community with us, or they make a request, we will attend court appointments with them, make sure that there's like a visible show of community in the, I don't know what you call it, the congregation, the audience of the
yeah,
courtroom.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
that can really impact a judge's decision when, sadly, when they see that a person
Hmm.
has support and people are watching. We also do like for the folks that we know and are regularly in community with us, we also like put money on people's books. We stay in touch with them while they're in jail. We coordinate so that we're at all of their court dates, even while they're in jail. And then we've even had a couple of groups of incarcerated folks who have organized to provide mutual aid to houseless folks on the outside. So they have like pulled together their commissary to buy a big order of socks and sent it to us with like a million stamps on the box and
Wow.
all this effort to stay in community. And
Yeah,
that's,
that's amazing.
yeah, and that's like basically the point is we don't want folks disappeared. You know, we want to
Yeah,
keep people in community. Doesn't matter to us if you're incarcerated by an unjust system or not. You're still
right.
family. We're still staying connected, and we're intentional about maintaining those connections.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that's such a crucial part of people. I feel like that I honestly don't think I don't know if I've ever really seen those two put together in a way where a collective or organization or anyone is like also focusing on, people who are in jail like that. And I feel like that's very important. I don't know, like I've gone to some stuff here and covered like the organization that I'm working for now actually does like every month they do like um what do they call it, lived experience advisory board, but it's essentially
Mhm.
just like bringing in people off the street, and everyone talks about like what could be done better, what their experience, kind of that, like what they've been going through. But it's like I hear people who work in like homeless shelter or whatever, there's a lot of language that's like just all putting the impetus on the person, the individual, and there's no like, there's no class consciousness at all. There's no vision for the wider, like, this is going to keep happening and it's going to get worse and worse. And it's like this wider thing that I don't see. 'Cause I don't know, like, one of the things that pisses me off a lot is people who think that it's like they need to put the effort in to save themselves. And it's like, even people who don't, because we also have people who don't want to go through the system. And it's like, we still need to do stuff for those people. That doesn't just mean, oh, well, they're not even going to go in the shelter. They don't want help. They don't want help. And it's like, no, I don't think that's true. I think they like help and they like being in community and they would like having a sleeping bag so they don't freeze to death and like that kind of stuff. But there's just there, especially locally here, there's no vision of that or anyone trying to do that at all.
Yeah, that's a conversation that I've repeatedly had with the city and county is like you are doing the bare minimum right now and trying to defend that, and you're ignoring the fact that this community, this population is growing exponentially, and so you're always going to be reactive if you're continuing on with the status quo, and that's not good enough. Like the population is growing and it's going to continue to grow. And another thing I get on them about is they have a system to match people with housing, and they do match people with long-term housing, like a 1-year lease in an apartment eventually. But you're really expected to like graduate through this tiered system of
Mm,
institutions that mimic carceral institutions.
yeah.
And that's one thing I try to advocate for because I'm also a person with a lot of invisible disabilities. When I was houseless, communal shelter was never going to be an option for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so basically, how that was previously was that those folks that are communal shelter averse or for whatever reason cannot, live in a situation like that, that's the first touch point for like the housing continuum as they call it. So that means those people don't even get on the list. They just sit in street homelessness for months or years.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so that's why we have like street outreach workers also. But yeah, like you can't just create an institution and think that a blanket solution is going to work for such a complex population of people who are
Yeah.
experiencing the worst traumas of their lives. It's just
Yeah.
not, it's just never going to work like that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, I think the one of the guys who I when I started doing this was who was local, who I like got to know over several months, and he shared pretty much his life story, but um he had PTSD from essentially like child abuse and could not sleep around people at all and would
Mhm.
literally attack people if he was like touched or moved
Mhm.
or startled at all. So yeah, I don't know. People just don't understand like that. There are so many different versions of that out there for people. Like I had one friend when I was like homeless and traveling around, and she grew up from the age of 11 and was unhoused in Chicago. Started hopping trains when she was 14, and she cannot live inside. If she tries to
Mhm.
start living inside, she has schizophrenia, and her schizophrenia will get really bad. And it's like this person literally can't live inside. But I don't know. I'm such a wide spectrum of experience that I people can't even conceptualize, I don't think, or
So
realize like the myriad different variability that goes into like the different people going through this kind of stuff.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and that's why I try to advocate for those types of things. Like I still sleep outside whenever it's possible because it's more comfortable for me and it feels less restrictive. But
Yeah.
if I were to explain that to the folks that are designing these systems and structures, I would sound ridiculous to them. So it's like they don't get it because they're not really trying to get it. They're not
Yeah.
really trying to understand
Yeah.
deeply.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the last thing I was kind of curious about was for you guys for the winter time. That's something I've been focusing on here because actually that guy Donnie, who I was just talking about, I talked to him a few weeks. The last time I talked to him, he was like a few weeks away from getting housing, and he froze to death 2 days before getting off the street, and which got me looking into all of the other people, and like no one reports on it, and like I was able to do like one local piece on him because I already had his whole life story in his own words to be like, hey, this is a person that existed and that is dead now because we weren't able to help them in time. But I was curious if you guys have, I know like that pastor I was talking to, he started overnight warming locations in the winter, but I was curious kind of what wintertime looks like for you guys to try to just, you know, not have people freezing to death essentially.
Yeah, wintertime is really rough for us. Not that the summer's not rough, but
Right.
I feel there are fewer deaths during the summer. We do lose people in the winter,
Yeah.
and I mean, so there are warming centers. They're not open all the time. There's like specific and arbitrary conditions that open those for whatever reason. Usually that justification is like the city or county don't have the money to keep them open all the time, but that puts people at risk for cold weather injury and death all the time. And yeah, we lose people a lot in the winter, and a lot of times nothing gets said about that. So we kind of do similar stuff. Like we typically will hold a vigil or memorial for folks that pass because we know that probably no one else is going to do that. The city does have a kind of program where when a person who's experiencing homelessness passes away, they dedicate a plaque with their name on it to this specific location under an overpass downtown that people can visit and read the names. And that was founded partly by Dr. Jim Withers, who's kind of a legend here in Pittsburgh and elsewhere. He founded Operation Safety Net. He's a really established person in terms of like outreach and medical support and things like that for houseless folks. But that event, I usually don't go to it. They hang the plaques once per year, and it seems to turn into like a press kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
opportunity for people in political positions who want to be seen and heard on the topic, but actually are not in community with these folks when they pass, or trying to reach them in any meaningful way before they pass. So seems to me these days to be pretty performative and weird, but
Yeah.
yeah, we do the best we can. I mean, a lot of times we end up taking people into our houses when it's extremely cold and they don't have anywhere else to go. We try to organize transportation to the warming shelters, make sure we know where our people are and that they're safe. And then a lot of people will squat in the winter and be inside a tent in a squat. So we support all squatters, anyone who's squatting,
Right.
and just try to gather things like propane and kerosene heating sources and things like that. Yeah, try to, obviously, we have like wish lists with related materials like hand warmers and extra warm sleeping bags for the winter, hats, gloves, and we're constantly distributing those things. But the problem is people are constantly landing in homelessness. So it's always
Right. Right.
triage, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's tough. Also, I'm sorry that you had that experience and knew that person and had to go through that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really shitty. It's pretty much the only way about it. And yeah, it's learning. I don't know. Like the other thing I think is very important with this and that I've been trying to do locally is like finding out who all has died because we don't even have that statistic available. We don't, no one knows, and no one knows how many people there are. Like I think I was talking to an administrator at like one of the like the only men's shelter we have, and she said that she knew of I think 24 people who died last year, and our homeless population is it's similar to you guys. I think it's around 200 to 300. I want to say even at any given time. Um, but yeah, it's just people. It's another thing I think a lot of people don't realize is just how uh and there's other deaths besides
Mhm.
freezing to death that are due to poverty. But yeah, it's just I think it's trying to I don't know, I'm trying to find out who all those people are and just get their name at least and just be like, hey, this is a person that existed and
Yeah.
that we failed to help, and that's on us that this shit is happening in our own community. But
Yeah, totally.
yeah.
We have similar challenges here where like sometimes I'll read in the paper in the news or something like this person like a body was found in the river and no more information on that. So if my people are a diaspora everywhere, there's no way for me to know like is this somebody that I'm in community with? Was this somebody experiencing homelessness? Like there's really no information. So guaranteed there are people passing away or disappearing otherwise that we're not able to account for and that just go unnoticed, which is really
Yeah.
sad.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, but yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. I was wondering, is there anything else you want to say about what you guys are doing or just, yeah, anything we left out?
Um, I mean, I guess the one thing that I want to say is that if you are waiting to get involved in this work, the time has passed. The time has passed. We need everybody right now. Like, we are legitimately at war in the
Yeah.
streets with folks dying and being disappeared and incarcerated. So, if you're even remotely thinking about meeting your neighbors or getting involved in mutual aid, the time is right now, and just don't doubt that. Like it will be extremely rewarding, especially if you're a person that's feeling anxious or ruminating about how badly things are going right now. The best way to remedy that is to act.
Yeah.
So this is the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just want to say, I think the protests that you guys did
I think I'm
with
frozen.
the actually camping, I think that needs to be, oh, did you freeze?
Yeah, here we go. I'm back.
Oh, okay. Did I miss anything you said?
I don't think so. I
Oh,
stopped. I think it's there.
okay. But yeah, I just wanted to say, yeah, before we go, I think that the protests you guys are doing, that style is really important. I think that needs to be done a lot more all over the country of actually places where sweeps are happening, like going camping there. It seems like it's more of a form of resistance. I feel like that's way more like, hey, we actually care. about this, and we're here to, like you said, like put ourselves in between them and the police, which I think there needs to be a lot more of that happening. But yeah, that's why I really appreciate what you guys are doing for many reasons. But yeah, and I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm really excited about your project. I hope it goes really well. I'm glad you're doing these recordings, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'll be in touch with you. I'll send you a link or whatever whenever this gets out. And yeah, I just really appreciate you talking to me today.
Cool.